Hi, I'm Christopher Gorham, and this is a series of conversations with folks that I think might help us deepen our discussion about COVID-19. So I'm looking to talk with people who have stories that haven't fully been told or might have answers to questions that I may have. And today, I'm sitting down with a member of the New York Times Editorial Board, a very talented journalist named Mara Gay. On May 14th, I read an article that she wrote in the New York Times about her firsthand experience of being infected with the virus, being sick, what her recovery was like, and things that she learned. So through this conversation, we get to hear about that experience in a lot more depth than she's able to go into in the newspaper. And along the way, we get to know her a little bit. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Mara Gay. Here we go. Hi, Mara. Thank you so much for taking the time out to do this. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This is great, Chris.
I read your article on the 14th about your experience with COVID-19, which is why I wanted to talk to you. But before we get to that, I'm hoping to give folks an idea to get to know you a little bit. I think it's really unfair that actors always get all the attention and everyone knows everything about us and journalists never get a chance to talk about themselves. So I wanted to give you that opportunity. I would love to hear about your parents, about your family. Do you have brothers and sisters? Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? All the good stuff.
Sure. It's funny, I spent 10 years as a news reporter before joining the opinion side. And so my training and my instinct is to stay out of the story, but I'm still getting used to this. So you guys have to bear with me.
No worries.
So I actually was born in Manhattan. I'm a native New Yorker. I lived in Brooklyn until I was 10. And then my parents and I moved to the suburbs, to White Plains. And not very exciting, but it was a great place to grow up.
Yeah.
I went to school at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, which was a total blast. Go Blue, exactly. And after, I graduated in 2008. So I can totally relate to these poor kids who are going out into the world looking for jobs right now, because it was a rough time, especially in journalism. Yeah. And I had many different jobs in journalism. I went through 4 layoffs, but I learned a lot. And I've been back in New York since, I guess, 2010, so 10 years now.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I joined the New York Times 2 years ago.
Did you always know you wanted to be a journalist?
Not always, although I was actually the editor of my high school newspaper.
You were?
So yeah, which basically means I am qualified to do absolutely nothing else. So I've been doing this a long time.
What did you study at Michigan? Like, did you study journalism?
No, I actually studied political science,
Really?
which was great. And then I worked for the school newspaper. Right. So yeah, and that's very common. A lot of times they'll tell you to study what you want to write about. And so politics has kind of always been in the blood. I knew I wanted to work in politics in some way and to help people.
Did you ever think about running for office?
No. Did you?
Me? No. Yeah. No. Not seriously.
But I'm under no delusions. I think government is pretty serious business, and the people who are good at it, I have a lot of respect for.
So when did you know you were sick?
I knew right away. On the morning of April 17th, I was going out for a coffee as usual, and I sat down to take a work call, and that feeling that you get when you're just coming down with something, where you feel maybe a little warm, maybe you just don't feel right, you feel off.
Yeah.
And given the fact that I live in New York City, I went straight home. Right. Don't pass go, don't touch your neighbors.
Right.
I had a mask on, obviously, anyway, but I went straight home, and I stayed there for over 14 days. So I knew right away. The first couple of nights, I was up having trouble sleeping, obviously, and I could actually hear all of my neighbors, not all of them, lots of them coughing all night long. And so I think, given the density, given the failure to protect New York at multiple levels of government, you know, the really the widespread nature of the virus made it almost impossible for some of us not to get it. I mean, I had to go grocery shopping. I was being careful, but yeah, it's still a mystery how I caught it, which is something that's a little bit scary for people, I think, because it's just highly contagious. Yeah.
When did you know you needed to go to the hospital?
Well, it was strange because the first day that I was sick, I had a low grade fever and the chills, and I knew what it was.
Like, what was your fever, low grade?
Just like I felt cold.
Okay.
It was like it was 99 something, and it really wasn't very bothersome.
Yeah.
And so then I went to bed and I kind of opened my eyes, and you know that feeling when a fever breaks. And I remember kind of feeling relief, like, oh well, maybe that's the worst of it.
Right.
And then I sat up, and it felt like just hot tar sank to the bottom of my lungs, and I really couldn't get a deep breath, unless I quickly realized, you know, the way to actually be was on all fours or to lean over, which is pretty common for people I know now with respiratory issues. And so after a quick,
why is it better on all fours?
well, it helps expand your rib cage and it helps give your lungs more room. Also being on your stomach really helps for that reason, because most of your lung is actually in the back.
Right.
So that's why I was told by my friends who are medical professionals that I should be sleeping on my stomach, which is counterintuitive. And I just want to spread that message as much as possible. If you are having trouble breathing, not from a panic attack, right? But if you know you're sick, and you're having that kind of trouble with COVID, the thing to do is to do breathing exercises and stay on your stomach. And if you're able to get a pulse oximeter, which is this like little device that you put on your fingertip, you know, if you can't find one, if you can borrow one, they usually retail for about $50 or $60.
You can get them
pricey,
on Amazon right now, because I went and bought
Amazon's, you know, Amazon does sell them, but I think they might be out. Your local pharmacy might be better.
Oh, great.
And Walmart, actually. Yeah. And so if you are sick and you're having trouble breathing and your oxygen level goes beneath 95, then you really need to go to an ER.
Right. And then what was it like when you got there? Like, I'm assuming you've been to the hospital before. So,
yeah.
So, is it different than other times when you've gone into the ER? What did it look like?
Sure.
Sound like? How did it feel?
Sure. Actually, it was very empty. The ER was very empty. I mean, New York's hospitals have been heavily stressed, but most of those are the public hospitals for those who don't have health insurance, and also ICUs, where you have patients on ventilators, kind of the sickest. So I walked in and it was very, very quiet. Went through intake very quickly. And honestly, within the 10 minutes that I walked in the door, they had me in a hospital gown on a hospital bed, hooked up to a pulse oximeter machine, pulse ox machine. And then eventually the doctor came, about my age, maybe a little older, and spoke to me. And she came in with goggles and a face shield and a mask and kind of a full gown. And you realize, you know, that's to protect them from you. And so, but she was very sweet, and she just looked at me and she said, well, clearly you have COVID. Right. She asked if I had any underlying conditions. Do you have asthma? Do you smoke? Anything else? And the answer was no to everything. And she just kind of shook her head almost and said, well, I, you know, this is so frustrating for us. I wish that there was something I could do for you. But if your oxygen goes below 95, come back to the ER. The next 7 to 10 days was very stressful, because it was not only just managing my symptoms at home, and I continued, the shortness of breath eased up, thank God, a little bit, but you know, I still have some of it today. And so you know, that 7 to 10 day period is really when, if patients are going to crash with COVID, that's when they do. And so I was just kind of breathing through, no pun intended, that time period to get out of the woods.
Right.
hoping I didn't get worse.
So this COVID has affected communities of color significantly more than other communities. So I guess I'm curious, as a woman of color, going into the hospital, was that on your mind? Were you
Yeah.
thinking about that? How did that affect you? Do you feel like it affected the care that you got? What that experience was like?
Sure. So it's always on my mind when I enter a healthcare setting. And I think you can relate to that because I know your family is multiracial as well.
Yeah, my wife's of Mexican descent, so she has a similar experience. I've seen it through her for our entire relationship of, more than a few times feeling like she's not being taken seriously.
Right. Right. That's always on your mind, I think. In my case, the care I received, though it was a brief experience, was, I think, the best care available. I didn't feel that I was not taken seriously. I did feel though that there's just very little care available for
Really?
people who are sick.
Yeah.
You know, the kind of care that we have right now is telling people to do breathing exercises, and I did ones that were recommended by J.K. Rowling and pioneered in the UK at their national health system.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
You didn't get them from the
yeah,
hospital? You got them from Harry Potter?
I got them from. That's right, the wizard herself.
That's amazing.
Uh, I was very grateful.
Yeah.
So
What are
yeah,
they? Would you mind
sure.
describing them?
So the most helpful one for me has been, I don't think there's really any name for it, but if you, this is the Harry Potter breathing exercise. If you you take a good deep breath, like hold that for 5 seconds,
Okay.
release it, do that 6 times. On the sixth time, you cough instead of breathing out,
Okay.
hoping to make your coughs more productive. You do that 2 times, so 2 cycles, and then you roll yourself onto a pillow over, on your stomach over a pillow, and you breathe deeply for 10 minutes. And every time I do that, my oxygen shoots up.
Really?
Yeah. They call it proning,
Okay.
lying prone.
Yeah. Yep.
It's not nearly as exciting as it sounds, but it's it's very effective.
That's actually, I think, super helpful for folks who, especially since you didn't get that from the hospital. Did they give you any kind of exercises to do from the hospital?
No,
No, they just
I
kind
think that no, I think they're very overwhelmed. I don't blame them.
yeah, yeah.
You know, one thing I mentioned in my column was that in Germany, the country is doing um, house calls.
Yes.
Germany is sending teams of medical workers to people's homes to check on them.
Yeah.
And I think this country, it's broken in many ways, but one of the issues is our healthcare system, and primary care has always been an afterthought here, even for those who do have insurance,
Yes.
or for those who aren't people of color or in a vulnerable population. And so I think when even if you're in a good place, this is not the best place to be recovering, frankly, from this virus, which can be mild or can turn deadly very quickly.
Yeah.
And so I think there's very little care for people at home, and that's a major concern of mine right now. And I think if you are in a vulnerable population, I mean, when I was laying there sick at night, listening to the ambulances,
Yeah.
it was pretty heartbreaking. And I just had to wonder how many of my neighbors were not um, doing well, not necessarily because it was inevitable once they contracted the virus, right? But because they didn't receive the care that they needed when they needed it.
Yeah.
And so by the time you call 911, it's often too late, we're finding. If you cannot breathe, don't wait.
Yeah.
Go to an ER. That's what they're for. There's no other help for you.
Yeah.
And the only way that I can see a doctor right now is in an ER.
Right.
Unless I'm on video, which is not the same.
No. No. How long did it take you to recover, and are you recovered?
So I am not fully recovered yet. It's been over a month. Um, I am getting better every day, slowly,
Yeah.
but I am getting better. And it feels like it's taking forever. But my understanding now, from my friends who are medical professionals, is that moderate COVID recovery is about 6 to 8 weeks.
Wow.
And so that kind of assumes some pneumonia for a younger, healthy person. And I am able to walk outside now. I can't run.
Right.
I can't really lift a lot of things. So my friends still have to bring my groceries up the stairs for me.
Sure.
I use 2 inhalers twice a day.
Mhm.
I've never used an inhaler before in my life before this.
Yeah.
I do breathing exercises, but I am on the mend, and I'm very grateful.
How many people do you know that have gone through this, that have had COVID?
Gosh, I couldn't give you an exact number
Oh,
offhand.
okay.
I would, I mean, I would say that I personally know 20 at least. Yeah,
20?
easily,
That's
easily.
shocking to me.
Yeah, I mean that's just living in New York, right? And then in terms of friends, close friends and family who know someone or are related to someone who is sick or was sick,
Yeah.
I would say closer to 100
Wow.
easily.
Mara, I mean, honestly, that's a shocking number. Like, I was expecting you to say like 5 or 6.
Oh yeah, no, New York, New York is we've been very sick. Everybody knows somebody here
Yeah.
who's been sick. So I hope people learn from us, and nobody expects the country to live cloistered forever. And I think we're just as eager in New York to get back to work and school and play as everybody else,
Yeah.
if not more so, frankly. I think it's just a plea to respect what the virus can do,
Yeah.
and also to just take reasonable precautions. So if you do live in a state where things are opening up and you can't help yourself but to go to a restaurant, please wear a mask.
Yeah.
It's not for you. It's actually to protect other people, especially people who maybe work at the restaurant and don't have a choice but to be there. So
That's a great point. And I think, so still, I think people have it in their mind that that if you're wearing the mask, it's because you think you're sick, or other people are going to think you're sick, or that you're weak. And the fact is that so much of the transmission of this virus is happening from people who are non-symptomatic.
yeah.
And
The other thing that we're learning, and we do have some early data in New York that backs this up, but we won't get a full accounting for some time yet, is that, for example, my case is not even counted in the data yet because I never was able to get an actual COVID test despite the fact that I was at an ER.
that's what I was going to ask you. Did they give you
Yeah.
a test? They didn't.
No,
Wow.
which given how few tests we have is understandable. I'm not a first responder, so, but it's crazy. Anyway, I think we're going to find out what New Yorkers already know anecdotally, which is that just because you're not in the hospital on a ventilator, and that is a much smaller percentage of people
Sure.
compared to those who are infected overall. Just because you're not one of those very unlucky people does not mean that you're not very sick. I have friends who are older and who have asthma who were infected and had far milder cases than I did.
Wow.
Friends who are younger than me who were sicker than I was.
Yeah.
So it's a roll of the dice. And on top of that, as you pointed out, Chris, even if you think that you're invulnerable or invincible, which you're not, you might have a mild case, but how would you feel if you gave that to a neighbor or a friend or a family member who didn't? I mean, you would never walk outside in a coffee shop and kick a stranger in the shin. Mm-hmm. So please wear a mask.
Yeah.
It's not a lot to ask.
No, it really isn't. Are there any like support groups that you're aware of? Is there like a community growing for people that have been through this?
That is a great question. I have not heard of anything like it yet, but I know that that I'm sure we'll start seeing them soon. My main concern is trying to get some kind of support and help to people who are in bad shape right now. Yeah. The kind that I got, and just trying to pay that forward.
Yeah. That was Annelle's question, by the way, so I have to give her credit. She was like,
I know.
I have to ask
Thanks,
Mara about this. When things get back to normal, whatever that's going to be for a while. But let's just say they get back to normal. What are you looking forward to getting back to doing?
Running,
Yeah.
going to the beach,
Nice.
and hugging my friends and family. Um, I have not been able to, I think just processing what I've been through and what the city has been through on my own, um, without being able to just like hug my best friends
Yeah.
has been difficult.
Mm.
Just simple things, going to a bar, eating out at my favorite restaurant,
Yeah.
commuting on the subway, which I did not think I would miss. What about you?
Yeah, I don't miss the subway. I don't know how
Right.
you guys do it.
It's not the easiest place to live, but we like to say like high highs, low lows.
Yeah. Oh,
um, but truly, I mean, I grew up here until I was 10, right? It's a blast,
yeah.
and you meet people from all over the world, and there's nothing like the energy and the hustle
Yeah.
of New York. And I've seen how much neighbors who don't know each other have cared for one another.
Yeah.
And in fact, this morning I was on a walk in my neighborhood, and I saw some family had literally just taped a string attached to a bottle of hand sanitizer to a tree,
Yeah.
and said, "Use it if you need it."
That's what we need to get through this, I think. Like we really need to come together as a community. It's the fastest way through. It's just the fastest way through.
I can't agree more. I mean, I think back to the full circle to the beginning of our conversation, especially about disparities in healthcare,
Yeah.
and folks who are out there thinking that this isn't going to affect them,
Right.
because they're not in a high risk group.
Yeah.
I think just the total collapse of empathy
Yeah.
in American life across, um, race and class, especially,
Yes.
and the partisan divide for sure,
Yeah. Yeah.
is part of what's contributing, unfortunately, to this mentality of, well, it's not my family or my neighbors who are going to be affected.
Yeah.
First of all, you don't know that. So
Correct.
uh, there's lots of my neighbors here in New York who are quite wealthy, and have been very sick.
Yeah.
And secondly, what went so wrong in your heart and in this country in recent years, that that's the kind of mentality.
Yeah.
I think we're all connected, is what I've learned.
Yeah.
And the more we realize that, the more we help each other, the better place we'll all be in, and the healthier we'll be.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to wrap this up. Thank you again for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. And I hope that you and Anel and the family stay safe and just can find some joy in this horrible time. I'm so glad we connected.
Thank you. Me too.
Take care.
All right. You too. Bye.
Bye.
That was my conversation with Mara Gay. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you can think about subscribing or leave a comment and let me know if there's someone that you'd love to hear from. I liked where we ended that conversation because I truly believe that the best way to solve most problems, certainly most big problems like a global pandemic, is for all of us to come together as a community and work towards a common goal and the common good. And with that in mind, I hope this finds you safe and healthy, and I'm wishing you all the best. Until next time.